the bustling city of Waterdeep, a figure in tattered robes moved purposely through the crowded streets. The man, known as Onior, appeared as a sage of considerable knowledge, his dark eyes hinting at deep wisdom. As dusk fell, Onior arrived at the palace of Lady Laeral Silverhand, the open lord of Waterdeep. The guards, noticing his scholarly appearance, allowed him entry. Onior walked through to the grand hall, finally standing before Laeral and her advisors.
"My lady,"
Onior began, his voice laced with urgency,
"a terrible creature, a Feyr, haunts Waterdeep. It thrives on the fear of your people, growing stronger each night."
Laeral's eyes narrowed. Who are you to bring such news?
"I am Onior, a humble scholar versed in the arcane. I have felt the creature's presence, seen its effects. It must be stopped."
And how do we find and defeat this Feyr? She asked.
"The Feyr hides in shadows, preying on the fearful. Illuminate the darkest corners of the city and rally your bravest warriors. Magic may weaken it, but courage and steel are your true weapons."
Laeral considered this, then nodded. We shall follow your counsel, Onior, but if you deceive us, you will pay dearly. Onior bowed deeply and said,
"I seek only to protect Waterdeep."
That night, the city was ablaze with torchlight of the signs of battle. Onior watched from a rooftop, a small smile playing on his lips. Amidst the chaos, the people of Waterdeep, emboldened by their lady, confronted the monstrous Feyr. However, Onior's true allegiance lay with the Feyr, and the chaos was precisely what they needed. In the distance, the Feyr writhed, a dark silhouette against the flames. Seizing the opportunity, it moved swiftly through the chaos, heading directly towards the palace. The people of Waterdeep were too preoccupied with the chaos in the streets to notice the real threat. As Laeral coordinated the defense efforts, a chilling presence filled the great hall. The Feyr materialized from the shadow, its a form, a twisted mass of darkness and fear. Laeral turned, her eyes widening in shock as the creature lunged at her. Onior, standing in the shadows, watched silently. He had served his master well, guiding the city's defense away from the true target. The Feyr, now within striking distance of the open lord, loomed over Laeral, ready to strike. In that moment, the full truth came to light. Onior was a thrall, bound to the very monster he had warned against. His deception had paved the way for the Feyr's attacks, ensuring Waterdeep's fall and darkness. As the Feyr's wrath descended upon Laeral, Onior felt a twisted satisfaction in his servitude. So today's video is on the Feyr. First, what does Boo tell you? So Feyrs are large tentacled aberrations which are said to feed on strong emotions. Feyr are said to feed off nightmares in the dead of night to minimize risk to themselves. Feyr are light sensitive but are not harmed by it, meaning they're at home in the void of wild space or in dungeons. Feyr are said to stow away on spelljammer ships, remaining hidden until it finds a sleeping victim to feed on. Stats-wise, the Fey are large, chaotic, evil-aligned horrors which are strong and intelligent. The intelligence means that they would sooner rather run away from a fight than die in self-preservation. They have a bite attack, which forces a wisdom save, which, if failed, causes fear in the victims. The Feyr's multi-attack includes one bite and one tentacle attack, the latter of which grapples creatures. Notably, compared to other similar creatures that grapple, like a Chol, the Feyr's grapple doesn't have an upper size limit. Feyr have an innate ability to cast invisibility at will, which ends when they attack, use their Nightmare Fuel ability, or dismiss it as a bonus action. The signature move of the Feyr is its Nightmare Fuel ability, which forces a wisdom save on an unconscious creature and deals 5d10 psychic damage on a fail, with the Feyr gaining temporary hit points equal to the damage dealt. Next, let's talk about what Boo doesn't tell you. So, 5e portrays the Feyr as being fueled by nightmares, but in previous edition they were created by nightmares and dormant magical energy. In previous editions, the Feyr were categorized into 4 forms: the larval, lesser, common, and greater. The greater were said to be formed as the amalgamation of many smaller Feyrs. Feyrs had 5 eyes, and they have a mottled iridescent hide, which is warped like the folds of a brain. Lesser Feyrs were said to be able to cast the spell Feyr in previous editions, and greater Feyrs could directly influence emotion with the spell Emotion. In previous editions, common Feyr and smaller were just killed outright by sunlight. Greater Feyr could survive the sun, however. In previous editions, Feyr eggs were said to be created by a mixture of miscast spells and emotions like despair and tragedy. Feyr eggs were said to be as small as a grain of rice and could be carried by a draft of air like a dust speck. These Feyr eggs were said to be fragile and they would be destroyed by direct sunlight or if not nourished by emotions. Greater Feyr also had the ability to quote unquote peel off some of its life force, end quote, to form a lesser Feyr. Greater Feyrs were also said to be emotionally manipulative into humanoids to force them to be familiars or slaves. The smartest and most powerful of the Feyr can manipulate politics or society to instill more negative emotions, of which then it feeds on, causing widespread discontent and societal collapse that would make a black dragon or a demon lord of the abyss jealous. So in conclusion, the Feyr as presented in the stat block of the 5e book and the flavor text are conflicting. The monster in the stats portrays a monster that attacks with its teeth and tentacles and knocks a target unconscious and then feasts using its nightmare fuel. Makes sense. In the book, the lore, it states that it's an ambush predator which sneaks into ships using its invisibility and feeds on the dreams of sleeping crewmates, or presumably your PCs. I don't think I would recommend to use this monster as presented in the lore. It's either going to fail and move on, with the PCs being none the wiser as they're asleep, or it's going to damage a sleeping player, making them less equipped for the next day. The monster works as a horror in the dungeon or as a story told about the horrors of wild space, but the lore just doesn't line up with how the Feyr actually works in practice. The concept is cool, but there's just a disconnect between how the monster is portrayed and how it's statted. I'm going to give this an 18 out of 20.